going to start naming some names here just for the sake of propriety. So Mike Serino from Saugus, Frank Tramontosi and Mayor Kogan Quincy are here. Jonathan Berg from Melrose, Todd Blake in Medford, Bernie Lynch from Community Paradigm, thank you. Dan Carty from Sudbury, thank you, Dan, for being here. Josh Ostroff from Natick. Patrick Deschen from Norwood, I hope I pronounced that correctly. Colette Ufranc from Wellesley, thank you for being here. And I understand that Mayor of Medford might join. Thank you, Todd, for letting me know. Mike Dennehy, hello. Thank you for joining us from Milton. Greg Gumond from Marshfield, thanks for joining. Everyone, if you could please just type your name in the chat and also the city or town you represent. I would appreciate it. Kelly Moore, I see you probably can't type because you're driving, but we know you're here. Thank you. Please don't type, Kelly. 9 and 12, right? Or 9 and 3? 9 and 3. Thank you, Bjorny from Wilmington, Todd Corain from Brookline, Katrina Huff-Lamont from Randolph. Thank you for joining us. Appreciate it, everybody. This is also going to be how we kind of do our attendance. So it's very helpful if you could type your name in the chat and just let us know the municipality you represent.
How do I do that?
So Dan, are you on an iPad or a
iPad.
computer? Oh, I don't know how to do it from an iPad, but there's a chat function usually at the bottom of the screen. You could click on a button that just says chat. And then down the bottom right, you just click.
No, it's just my.
You just type
it's a picture of me, and it does have my name, Dan. So.
Well, that's. I'll type your name for you,
okay,
Dan.
Whitman. Because I wasn't.
Everyone.
I noticed in the agenda it had me not listed as as being there, and I was there.
I apologize for that. We had a little snafu with that, which I'll try to explain.
Yeah, okay.
But you're hard to miss, Dan.
Okay.
You're very hard to miss.
I've been around.
And so just once again, everyone, if you could just type your name in the chat in this municipality you represent, this will suffice as our sign-up sheet. So I'm trying to sort of name it as we go so that everyone knows who's here. And our general counsel tells us that this will suffice. Jen Constable from Hull, thank you. Jay Monty from Everett, thank you. I'm going to type Kelly Moore from Braintree because he's driving. And we all want Kelly to be safe. Oh boy. Thanks everybody for joining us today. We'll get started in just a second. Once again, if you could please just use the chat function to type out your name and your municipality. That would be very helpful. If you need help doing that, I can do it for you. Just let me know. Just sort of unmute and answer. Thank you, Suzanne Rasmussen from Cambridge and Susan Barnett from Lexington for joining and letting us know you're here. Selectman Epstein from Belmont, thank you. Roy, appreciate it. I see Alan Castelline from Brockton is here. Chris Bogursky from Canton. Welcome, gentlemen. Thank you. Len Diggins from Arlington. Len, if you could type your name in the chat, I'd appreciate it. Mayor Arrigo is joining us from Revere. Thank you, Mr. Vice Chairman, for joining. Once again, I hope everything went well in Revere last night. I see Glenn Cannon from Bourne. Hi, Glenn. If everybody could just type your name in the chat, please. That's going to act as our sign-up sheet today. Really appreciate it if you could just use the chat function. If you can't, let me know and I can type your name for you. Let's see. So Michael Dutton from Bridgewater has joined us. Thank you, Michael. I see David Kozis from Newton. If you could, again, just type your name in the chat function, please, so that we know you're here. And I should also note that this is being recorded for open meeting purposes. We'll probably post it on the website again, just for propriety's sake. Okay, Al, I'm gonna type your name. Did you, oh, Al Banger, you typed your name in already, didn't you? I think I saw you there.
Sure did.
Thanks, Al, appreciate it. David from Newton, thank you. Really appreciate everybody. If you could just do that, and I will try to remind folks as we go. But in the interest of time, at this point, Mayor Koch, I believe the gavel is yours, sir.
Well, good morning, everybody. I hope and
Morning.
trust everybody is doing well
Hello.
through these times we're living. So I know there's a robust agenda here, so we'll go right to the next item, which back to you, Brian, for your executive director's report.
Thank you, sir. I will be very brief because we do have a lot to get through. So just briefly to update the membership, as I said, if everybody could please just type your name in the chat and the city or town you represent, that will suffice as a sign-up sheet, and I will try to read them out as we go. I'm told by our general counsel that that will suffice for open meeting purposes instead of having to do a roll call, which I don't think any of us, especially me, want to see. So in the interest of time, like I said, I'll be brief. Since we last met, I've been working with on a number of fronts to improve the member experience. I wanted to thank, before we did anything else, the bylaw committee, Laura Weiner, Steve Olenoff from Westwood, and Michael Dutton of Bridgewater. I think the bylaws are a great improvement to the body and getting ourselves on a much more formalized basis. I wanted to also thank our general counsel, Jennifer DePazzo Gilbert, for her sage advice. It's really been very helpful. In the past month or so, I've met with several legislators to discuss the T's service cut plans, as well as several members of the press. I was quoted in today's newspaper, for instance, about some T financial plans. The advisory board has a very solid reputation as an impartial, apolitical, fact-based advice giver. And I think it's very important that we continue that tradition as much as possible. We neither support nor oppose administrations. We support the T. And that is I think is something it's important for us to continue. During these briefings with legislators, I've offered my own analysis of the T's budget and discussed what I believe will be happening. And I'll go through some of that later on today. Work on our strategic review continues. We'll hear later on today from Mr. Bernie Lynch from Community Paradigm Associates, who'll give an update on that. That strategic review is really going to set the table for the next several years of the organization in terms of how we operate and in terms of what we can and cannot do. I think it's going to be very important. I look forward to hearing from Bernie. I'm sure many of you in your careers have worked with him and his partner in crime on this, Carl. I mentioned Bernie used to be the city manager in Lowell, among other places, and his partner Carl was the town manager in Lexington once upon a time. So these gentlemen know municipalities and understand Massachusetts regional bodies, and I'm really grateful to have them working with us on this. My work on your behalf continues with the Boston MPO. I wanted to let folks know that the advisory board, along with MAPC, are the two election officials for the upcoming MPO election. Ballots are actually due today, signed by the chief elected official of your city or town in the Boston region. Unlike on our national stage, we do not have a contested election this year. So this election official will be announcing the results as soon as the polls close. So you can count on accurate results, at least for the Boston MPO election. And as I mentioned earlier to Jonathan Berg from Melrose, a goal for the upcoming month and the next couple in early in the new year is to get a set schedule for the body. I think it's important for all of us if we can put stuff in our calendars and just know that it's going to be there. So look for that coming out, working with the executive committee and others. Having a set schedule, I think, just makes the work and the cadence much easier. And that is something that I would ask you to please keep a lookout for. And in the interest of time and being brief, Mr. Chairman, that concludes my report today. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Anybody have any questions for Brian at this point? Seeing none, we'll go to the next item, which is the minutes from the September 17th meeting. Any comments on the minutes?
Dan Salvucci from Whitman. As I said to Brian, rather, I noticed that was in attendance last month, and my name was not listed in my
Apologies
town.
for that, Dan. Well, I'm adding it right now.
Thank
I
you.
also did receive some similar notes from folks. Steve Olenoff from Westwood was also present, and that has been updated in the version that will be posted on the website.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dan.
Okay, so no other comments? Can we get a motion to approve the minutes? Motion
Second,
by
second,
Josh,
Daniel from
seconded by
Whitman.
Daniel.
Yeah.
On the motion, Daniel?
Yes,
Or
second.
Just a second, okay.
Yeah.
All those in favor? Opposed?
Aye.
The ayes have it.
Aye.
Thank you. Brian, I'll turn it back to you to introduce Bernie to talk about Paradigm.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So as I mentioned in my report, the advisory board is undergoing a strategic review right now, both of internal operations as well as sort of external functions. We've using the services of Mr. Bernie Lynch and Community Paradigm Associates. I've worked with Bernie on a couple of things in the past and really feel he's one of the best out there in the business doing this. And I wanted to give him the opportunity to give us a bit of a preview and also to address the body today. So Bernie, if you don't mind, I'll turn it over to you.
Great, thanks, Brian. It's great looking out over all of these people in the on the Zoom call here. So many people I know and have worked with in the past. So it's great to see everyone out there. As Brian indicated at the outset, I'm working on this project with Carl Valente. Carl is a longtime town manager here in the Commonwealth. Worked in Needham, Weston, and Lexington, which I know are all have been active members of the advisory board in the past. Carl has a great experience working with regional bodies and just a good sense of operations and organizational mission. My experience is Brian indicated, for those of you who don't know, I was the city manager of Lowell for a number of years, and prior to that, the town manager in the town of Chelmsford for about 20 years. So all told, I have about 40 years experience working with or for municipalities. We provide, Community Paradigm does, looking out, I have a number of client communities out there, I know. We provide a variety of services to municipalities, organizational assessments, recruiting, management studies. We also provide similar services to a variety of regional entities. We're currently working with the Franklin Regional Council of Governments doing an organizational assessment. We're working with the Massport Community Advisory Committee, sort of a sister agency to the advisory board. So we think we have some good experience and some good perspective to come in and help you with this project. Essentially, the way we're looking at this project in terms of a strategic review for the advisory board is sort of from a macro level and a micro level, or as Brian described it, sort of an external as well as an internal review. The internal review is focused primarily on the business operation side of things, how you function, within the office, your cost centers that are there, the way that you process and manage your resources. We're looking at a number of different ideas that we think could help improve the efficiency and a general operation of the advisory board. From an external standpoint, I think certainly in looking at the advisory board and talking with a number of people already, there's a sense that you have a very large organization, a very large geographic area that you cover. The question is, what is the actual mission at this point of the advisory board? Because clearly the advisory board's mission and purpose has changed somewhat as the MBTA has changed over the years. Some of the authority that was given to the advisory board in your enabling statute has changed, and so we need to look at, how can we make the advisory board more effective and really more focused and centered on what its actual mission can and should be, to make sure that the member communities really have a voice at the table with regards to the operation of the MBTA. So as part of that process, we're talking to members of the advisory board. We're talking to some of the external stakeholders that are out there that interact with the advisory board to see what could be brought to the table in terms of making the advisory board, more engaged and involved. And certainly the advisory board has a great track record through the years of having a voice. How can we maximize that voice to make sure that the relevance continues and actually expands over time? So that's where we are. Our hope is to complete this work within the next probably 4 to 6 weeks of talking to people and have a report to you sometime in late December, early January. I think that's in line with the time frame that we've been talking about. I will say that I'll open it up for anyone that wants to talk right now. I don't know how much, I know you have a heavy agenda today, but if you do not have, if people have just general questions, if you want to spend more time with us, the more people we talk to, the better. So we can arrange to set up a time to do a Zoom call, do a phone call, so that we can get as many voices involved in this process as possible.
Jonathan Berg from Melrose. The one thing that I've been talking about for years here is that we need to take back, and we'll have to do this legislatively, much of the things that were stripped from the advisory board. And I think the last 12 months has shown the, just has shown the fact that a lack of the strong independent advisory board with strong financial controls has led beyond the pandemic, even before the pandemic, to the situation that we are now faced. So I hope as part of your review, you'll look to put back legislatively, we have to sponsor this and get someone to sponsor it, the enabling legislation to restore our powers.
Okay. I appreciate that. And Frank, I'll we can speak at greater length at some point if you'd like.
Thank you, Bernie. Thank you, John. Any other questions for Bernie?
Yes, Brian and Bernie, thank you for your work on this. I would echo Jonathan's comments and just say that perhaps in the coming months, as the legislature reconsiders what to do with the FMCB, that would be a good vehicle for this. And I would just note that Brian was very helpful in his participation in a report that in my day job with the Transportation for Massachusetts Coalition, we really tried to position the advisory board more firmly in MBTA governments. So I think there's, that was well received, if not acted upon, but I think that we have some good pieces in place. And I think that doing this work in the context, or making that recommendation in the context of a strategic plan that, reaches out to all member communities, I think really bolsters the case that we need to make. So I think it's really helpful to have that integrated, and in addition to all the other outstanding work under your leadership, Brian. So I'm hopeful. I think that we need to earn the legislature's trust, and we're on the way to doing that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Josh. I just wanted to note Mayor Brianna Longo Cohen from Medford has joined us. Thank you, Mayor, for joining us. And also Mayor Arrigo from Revere is also joining us today from Revere. Thank you, Brian, for joining us. Appreciate it. Are there any other questions for Bernie? I know he would love to reach out and hear from folks, from members and delegates about how your staff, myself and Ms. Gall, Deborah Gall has joined us, can work better, can help you more, and the more ideas that we hear, the better. So please reach out to me if you want to talk to Bernie or Carl, and I will happily make that happen.
Great, thanks. Thank you. Looking forward to working with all of you and getting you that information, these ideas, as I say, within the next couple of months. Great. Thank you. All right. Good seeing you.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, if you don't mind, I just wanted to read a few more names of folks that have joined us. So Chris Pogorski from Canton, Phil Laminos from Hull, Grace Patarini from Boston, Yem Lip in Malden, Mike Borg, I believe, is North Attleboro. Correct me if I'm wrong, please. Rich Prone in Duxbury, David Alschuler in Hingham, Selectman Margot Fleischman in Bedford, Blythe Robinson from, I believe, Norfolk. And if I missed anybody, please feel free to shout out your name at any time. Kelly Moore has not yet reached his destination, Kelly, but we hope you get there soon. I see Brian Howard from Randolph as well. Brian, thank you. Thank you, Mr.
Okay,
Mayor.
well, on to the next item, which is the discussion and perhaps action on the draft bylaws as proposed by the bylaws committee. Brian, are you carrying this ball, or one of the committee folks can pick this up?
Laura from Watertown, sir. Laura, you're muted, I believe.
Sorry about that. Okay. I am Laura Weiner from the Town of Watertown Planning Department. And I have been working with Steve Olenoff from Westwood, Michael Dutton from Bridgewater, as well as Jennifer Gilbert, who is an attorney who was helping us drafting bylaws. In fact, she did most of the drafting. And Brian also provided a lot of input. We hope you had a chance to review them before this meeting. These are the first real bylaws that I've ever seen, although I've been on the advisory board for many years. There are a couple of issues of note. One is voting. Voting is weighted by assessment. Members vote, the member votes are in the bylaws as attachment E. The total vote is 359, and Boston has 97, Cambridge has 12. The other inner core communities have between 2 and 10. Milton has 2, Watertown has 3, Somerville has 6, Newton has 7. Most other communities outside of the inner core have 1 vote. We have set the quorum at 25 members. We thought that that was an attainable number for important business. Brian let me know that at our most recent meeting, we had 30 members. So I think 25 is an attainable number. Remote participation is allowed in the bylaws, and committee voting is 1 member, 1 vote, and a quorum is 1 more than half the number of members. The committees, the executive committee includes all officers, chair, vice chair, secretary, clerk, and treasurer, and additional members constituting at least half of the total weighted vote. A quorum is a simple majority on that committee. Subcommittees created by the executive committee or the full board include standing committees, the budget committee, the bylaws committee, and the finance committee. And then ad hoc committees can be created at any time by the executive committee or the full board. Such, for example, might be the capital committee to oversee the MBTA capital budget, the commuter rail committee, the service committee, and the ferry committee. And I think if you have any questions, please let us know, but we're hoping to be able to vote today on the bylaws.
Any questions for Laura? Certainly on behalf of the committee, I want to, the board, I want to thank you, Laura, and the committee for putting this together. As you have been on the board for a number of years, and the first time I've seen formal bylaws for the group, and I think it's excellent. So good work for everybody. Any questions on?
Yes, Jonathan Berg again from Melrose. I do not understand, and I'm told it was part of the enabling legislation, it was a long time ago, but the fact that Melrose is outside the core. Melrose has commuter rail stops, 3 of them. We have 3 buses that come through here, where even though Oak Grove is called Malden, it really also is Melrose as well, great impact. And I think we should be included in the core. And that's something that I'm very concerned about, have been for a while.
So John, I agree. It should be the case. However, that is set in the legislation, 161A. We cannot change the legislation except through initiative petition. And that is something that I think we should file in January or February as we look at a package of things. But, you know, yes, but this is not the vehicle for that.
Okay, I just want that reflected, because I've already spoken to our legislative people and obviously the mayor, and we would like to be part of that core.
Here, here.
Thank you.
Any other comments, anybody? Motion to approve the bylaws as presented. Motion made. Gentleman from Natick, second.
Brookline second.
Brookline seconds it. All those in favor, raise your hand. Opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you again to the committee putting the bylaws together.
It was a pleasure. Thanks mostly go to Brian.
No, thank you, Laura. Thank you, Steve, and thank you, Michael.
Okay, next item on the agenda is the appointing committees, members, offices, potential action on this. Brian, you want to just talk about this a little bit?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. So now that we have new bylaws in place, we can act underneath those bylaws. And this is more just a housekeeping item. General counsel thought it was a good idea to do this only to make sure that we are compliant with our bylaws. The current committees were appointed under the old system, and it's not that they're no longer valid. It's just that folks thought that this was a better way to do it. I'm going to put up the committees on my screen so folks can look at it. This was also sent out last night. I should talk a little bit about the executive committee. So the executive committee is called for in the enabling legislation. It has to, by legislation, comprise half the weighted vote of the total body. As Laura mentioned, the total weighted vote is 357, which means that the executive committee votes have to be greater than 179.5. If you do the math on these with the weighted votes as we've done, this is over that threshold. This is not to try to exclude anybody. We certainly would like more participation than less. I also note that for the first time, the body will have a treasurer in Mr. Todd Corain from Brookline. Thank you, Todd. It's important, and I'm sure that Bernie and Carl's report will spell this out in greater detail. It's important that we have an independent set of eyes on things. I believe that we should have counter signatures on everything, and I look forward to working with Todd on that. So the executive committee, you can see here, it's mostly the inner core, and then I tried to get several communities that represented other services like commuter rail and ferry, as well as some geographic diversity. Everyone on here has been contacted and asked if they would accept the nomination. With the exception of Somerville and Milton, everyone said yes. Somerville and Milton were considering and talking to their town councils, which I certainly appreciate. I think we can go ahead and put them on, and they can resign if need be. The other committees are basically exactly the same as they were elected by this body last June. The Bylaw Committee, the Capital Committee, Commuter Rail, as well as Ferry, Finance, and Service. With that said, love to have everybody or have greater participation. The Ferry, Commuter Rail, and Service Committees are going to meet in the next 30 days to discuss what the MBTA is proposing. The Finance Committee will definitely meet in the spring to consider the FY22 budget for the authority. The Budget Committee, which is an internal body to us, will also probably meet in May. And the Capital Committee usually meets in the fall to consider the MBTA CIP, as happened last September, the last time we met. So this is the Service Committee. If anybody has any questions or would like to be added, please let me know. The chairman can certainly appoint you to a committee at any time. That's now in the bylaws. And we look forward to greater participation. I also want to mention that this body is large and unwieldy. I think we all can agree that 177 communities is a lot. So I see the committee structure as the way that the business of the organization will be getting done in the future. So love to have greater participation. And I'd also be happy to answer any questions as the chairman sees fit.
Anybody have any questions at this point? I think it's, we
Mr. Chairman?
talk about this body getting greater respect from the legislators and others. I think by putting the bylaws in place and formalizing the committees, it really shows that we have our stuff together, if you will. So I'm grateful for all those that have agreed to serve on the committees. Some folks may, like me, as mayor, I chair the school committee, and much of the work on the school committee is done in subcommittees. That's the idea of this setup, because as Brian articulated, having this many members on a broad board to try to get anything done of substance in a real meeting is challenging. So I do anticipate, much as Brian has said, that much of the work would be done in the committees and then come back to the full board. So if anybody has any questions, now's a good time.
Mr.
I
Chairman?
can't see them, Brian.
Josh and Natick.
Thank you so much. Appreciate all the work that's got into this proposed structure. I want to just briefly reflect on something that I shared in my interview with the strategic plan. I think the advisory board, and I have been observing it for a while and just an active member for a year, but functions best when we as members, and in particular, I think it'll be true when the subcommittees as members advocate for the needs of the system or the mode as a whole and not for their individual community. I believe that when we take up meeting time with questions and debate about our cities and towns, our stations, our service, it makes us less productive. And I think that is reflected in how we are seen externally. So I would just ask that the chairs of these committees and the members really endeavor to focus their contributions on system-wide issues and not be advocates for their individual communities, or try to find a balance. I just wanted to share that with you, Mr. Chair, and acting director, and thank you for consideration.
Those are good remarks.
Serving.
Appreciate that, Josh. Anybody else? Do we have a motion to accept the offices and committees as presented?
Sorry, Mr. Chair, can I ask a question first?
Please.
Just reviewing the bylaws, I don't see, this is Roy Epstein from Belmont. I don't see where the bylaws discuss whether the various standing committees have their own chairs. So is it expected that the committees would have their own chairs, or is the chair of the MBTA advisory board also chair of all these subcommittees?
No, Brian and I talked a little bit about that offline. I would suggest the subcommittees pick who the chair ought to be on those subcommittees, but I guess it is not articulated in the bylaws. So I mean, we're open on that. If somebody wants to suggest anything different. I don't know if you have any further thoughts, Brian. I know we chatted a little bit about it.
Mr. Chairman, can you hear me?
Hey, Rich, go ahead.
Yeah, I just was wondering, are the committee members that were there before going to be reappointed automatically, or do you have to basically volunteer again?
No, I think Brian mentioned that in his remarks. Those committee members that are on before are on it now.
Right.
Now, if you see any discrepancies on that, please speak up to Brian or myself, and we'll take care of that. But
That was just a procedural question I wanted to ask. That's all. Thank you.
Brian, do you want to expand on that discussion about chairs of the subcommittees?
Yes, sir. I mean, we did leave it vague on purpose so that the committees themselves would be able to make the choice. And if not, the Mayor Koch, as chairman of the body, has the authority to appoint a chairperson. But, he and I spoke, and we feel as if people will rise to the occasion as they see fit. So, please feel free to, if you choose to be chair, to talk to your fellow committee members, and we can have a vote and make it happen, or we could leave it vague and work sort of as a body, or we could just ask the mayor to appoint somebody. So,
Okay.
up to the body.
Just given some local experience here, it does. So this meeting, for example, is covered by open meeting law, I take it.
Absolutely.
What would meetings of the subcommittees also fall under open meeting law, or they would have to post agendas, keep minutes, and all of that?
Yes, and I should note that your staff, which is myself and Ms. Gall, will do all of that legwork for the committees. We will make sure that everything is above board, and certainly make sure that everything is compliant.
Brian, what is the process? This is John Berg again from Melrose. What is the process to add a committee?
Process to add a committee is spelled out in the new bylaws, which we just adopted. So the executive committee can appoint it. Mayor Koch can appoint it under his own authority. We can do it by acclamation today. We can, the more the better, John, in my humble opinion.
Okay. Is it done by a motion or how is it done?
So what I would suggest, John, is that you and I work up a charge, get it on paper. We'll send it out to the members via email, and we'll put it on the agenda for the next meeting of the
Great.
body or of the executive committee.
Great, thanks.
Anybody else? Any
If I could,
comments?
just Glenn Cannon, Town of Warren. Just as a municipal employee who's, helped numerous boards, maybe hundreds of boards, I'd go back to having the membership of the committee vote the chair. I think it's a process that's worked over time throughout, again, I want to say hundreds of boards have really seen function. I think it's a great process. I think there's great discussion amongst boards that way. You generally get a person that wants to be, as opposed to being appointed, who is willing to step into that role and take on that type of work. So I would support the advisory in the bylaws here, letting the committees themselves pick the chair.
Sure,
Okay.
Glenn, and like I said, we left it vague on purpose so that if that was the wish of the committee, that could happen, and if not, we have the option.
We can have the bylaws committee step back in and maybe make some adjustment on that and formalize it for a future meeting. And then the backup could be, if the committee doesn't act, then the chair could step in and speak to someone. So I think that's fair. Does that make sense? Laura, get you back to work.
I have to stay on mute because I'm not alone in my office, but yes, that makes sense.
Okay. You happy with that, Glenn? Okay. Any other comments? Seeing none, can I get a motion then to approve the officers and committees as presented today?
Motion to approve.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second,
Second.
Whitman, Salvucci.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. On the motion, any further questions? Seeing none. All those in favor, please raise your hand.
Aye.
Those opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you, everybody, for that. Appreciate that. And again, Brian, I know we had people working on this, but you're pulling it all together. So thank you again, Brian, for that work. I
Thank
guess
you.
next up is the discussion of our response to the pending MBTA budget and service change proposals. And Brian, I'll hand it back to you.
Thank you, sir. I am attempting to share a document, which I hope folks can see if they're able to look at it. Not you, Kelly Moore. Please keep your eyes on the road. He's still driving. I don't know. Where are you going, Kelly? But so originally the MBTA had planned to announce their service cut proposals 2 days ago on Monday the 2nd. They changed that to next Monday, the 9th. So that is when the proposals will come out. So we originally had planned this meeting to sort of come after the announcement, but now we're a little ahead of it. Nevertheless, what I hope to get out of this is a sense of the body on what our response will be. While we don't know specifically what they plan, we do have hints, and there have been several people that have talked about this publicly, and I don't think this is a surprise to anyone. What they're basically looking to do is, the rumor is, eliminate all ferry service, Hingham Hull. Charlestown falls into a different category, but from the chatter we're hearing, it looks like Charlestown will be on the block as well. There's going to be significant service changes to all commuter rail lines except Fairmont. So you're looking at basically the elimination of off-peak service or significant, reduction of off-peak service. Same with express bus service. Looks like those routes will be eliminated, if not outright, then significantly cut back to the point where it's more or less the same. Other low ridership bus routes, I looked back in our files from 2012. There were dozens of routes on the block that time for significant rollbacks. I would not be surprised if that were the case this time. These were bus routes that were out in certainly the 51 municipalities that are not the inner core, places like Needham and out sort of a little west of the city center. And with that would come major ride changes, which is the next bullet. So briefly, paratransit service is tied to where bus routes go. Within a quarter of a mile or 3/4 of a mile of a bus route, the MBTA is required by federal law to provide paratransit service at an ADA rate. Outside of that area, it provides paratransit service at a premium rate, which is much more expensive. It looks to me as if we're going to see big changes to paratransit through this process. And I want to be clear here. I'm not saying that they're specifically going after paratransit, but I do believe that one of the results of this change will be significant changes to paratransit. It looks like the private carrier program will also be on the chopping block. These are bus routes in places like Hull and Winthrop, Canton, Stoughton, and also some other private carrier bus routes that currently get subsidized by the T a little bit, places like Lexington and Bedford. And again, this is what the rumor is. We're waiting to see what comes out next Monday. And finally, light rail. The last time this happened, there were major changes proposed to the Mattapan line, as well as to the Green Line's E branch, specifically terminating the E branch at Brigham Circle, not continuing it into Mission Hill, as well as ending weekend service on Mattapan. So all this is to say that this is what I expect will be coming forward on Monday. As I said, we don't have specifics yet, but this certainly is what they're hinting at. What I want to put up next is a document. It's a calendar, which I hope folks can sort of see. I can certainly send this out after. This is sort of where we are for the next month. So we're meeting today on November 4th. The FMCB meeting is on Monday, where they will announce specifically the plan. They then go into a marathon of 11 public meetings, and they're actually putting up cities and town names on these meetings. So you see on the 10th, which is next Tuesday, focus on the Fitchburg, Worcester, and Needham lines. And then I'll hold on the red things for a second. They are targeting public meetings to different modes. They're holding a public meeting. Yes.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I don't think that what you are seeing is what we are seeing.
Oh, I'm sorry. Let me try this. Thanks for letting me know, Josh. It's hard to know when you're speaking into a screen.
That's fun.
How's that? Can you guys see the calendar now? Okay, great. I apologize for that. Thanks for letting me know, Josh. So again, this is what we're looking at for the next 30 days. The T is going to do these virtually via Zoom, and they are targeting them to different modes and different municipalities. So next Tuesday, focus on Metro West communities, specifically the Fitchburg, Worcester, and Needham lines. We'll skip the red boxes for a second. Next Thursday, the 12th, they're going to talk about bus service in sort of the inner west area, Arlington, Belmont, Burlington, Lexington, and Medford. They're proposing a very rare Saturday public meeting on the 11th for Boston and Milton folks. I believe that's where they're going to talk about the Mattapan high-speed line, as well as some bus routes in sort of the Mattapan area. And you can, we don't have to go through each of these, but as you can see, they are targeting different municipalities and different modes specifically. What I'm suggesting we do is have committee meetings sort of around these, also on specific modes, with MBTA officials to get specifics from what they are proposing. So I'm proposing that we have our service committee, our ferry committee, and our commuter rail committee each meet one each of the next weeks. I'm suggesting that we have our executive committee get together on the December 1st to sort of take a final crack at this. That will be the day after Thanksgiving. And I'm proposing that we have our next board meeting on December 4th, which would be the Friday before the control board votes. I see the raised hands. I'll get to that in a second. This would allow this body, the committees, to meet, to formulate their responses. The executive committee has the ability to kind of look at any documents or reports that I'll come up with. And then on the 4th, we're hoping that we can take a position. 11/11 is a holiday. Yeah, 11/11 is a holiday, so that won't work. Thanks for letting me know. So this month of November is tough because you have the Thanksgiving holiday and the Veterans Day holiday, so there's just not a lot of time. And they are definitely rushing this. But it is important that our committees get together and we can do this in the afternoons or the evenings or any time. It doesn't have to be on the 11th. I'm flexible. I do think it's important, though, that the body take a deep dive on a modal level and understand what our position is. And then what our response will be will really depend on what these committees have to say. The analysis that I've been doing, it doesn't look like the deficit, the actual deficit they have to find from the operating budget is huge. It certainly is a lot of money, but with the work they're doing through flexing money from capital to operating, with the work they're doing through the MPO, to move some money around, with the capital legislation that we have supported, it's between $60 and $100 million, which is a lot of money, but it is manageable. It is something that has been managed in the past. I also note that their head count is over 400 heads higher this fiscal year than it was in fiscal 18 when I last worked at the T, and over 200 heads higher than last fiscal year, fiscal 19. So there are options other than going to service. And if the board agrees, I think that certainly is something that we can look at. I have kept our powder dry right now. I have not been sort of gauging or theorizing what other options are out there because I wanted to hear from each of you first. But I do think that, our position will be that we oppose service cuts. And I do think that offering alternatives is another example or is a strategy that we could do. But I wanted to hear from the membership first before I kind of got out there. So, Mr. Chairman, if you don't mind, there are 3 folks that have sort of raised their hands through the raise hand function. I'll go to them. And then I'd love to hear from yourself and Mayor Arrigo and Mayor Luongo and a bunch of other people. But let's have a talk. If you could use the raise hand function through Zoom, I would appreciate it. Or we can figure it out. But I saw the first hand raised, I believe, was Margot in Bedford. Margot, if you could unmute yourself.
Yeah, I think I'm unmuted. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Excellent, thank you. Margot Fleischman, Select Board Member in Bedford. I just have a question about this information that you're sharing with us, and if there is a centrally located link on the MBTA website or on our website where we can disseminate this information and see more details about the agenda for each meeting that's being proposed for the public meetings.
Sure, Mark. So the T announced this on Monday on their website without any fanfare. So they didn't let anybody know it was there. But I check all the time and I sort of put it together. I believe next Monday more information will come out. I will share this with each of you and you can feel free to disseminate it as you see fit. But I do think there will be more sort of official information coming in the next few days.
And I see Josh just put a link in the chat. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Josh. What would we do without you, Josh? Who else has their hand raised? I see Roy Epstein, do you have your hand raised?
Thank you, Brian. I had the same question as Margot, so that's been answered. Thank you.
Great. I'm trying to find, there is a way to see whose hand is raised, but I don't know how to do it right now.
Go to participants, and then you.
Oh, there it is.
Yes.
Mr. Let's see, Len Diggins in Arlington.
Yes. Thank you, Brian. I'm Len Diggins, Select Board, Arlington, most recent member there, but more importantly, I'm one of the original members of the MBTA Rider Oversight Committee and one of the sub-chairs for the Capital Investment and Finance Committee, subcommittee. And what I would like us to focus on is the elasticities of service cuts. And so to the extent that the T is looking at deficit coming from fare collections, cutting service is just going to exacerbate that, or at least that's the working theory. And I think it'd be good for us to maybe substantiate that and give that as a reason to be very wary about doing service cuts. Thank you.
Thanks, Len. Always wise. I'm going to lower your hand. Let's see. I had Susan Barrett from Lexington next. Susan.
Okay. Hi. Thank you. Well, I have a question and a comment. First, the question. I'm just curious. So, worst case scenario, we end up losing services. How does that impact community assessments, if at all?
It doesn't. Assessments
It
are
doesn't.
based on
Okay.
population, not on service levels.
Right. Okay. That was kind of my thought. All right. And then I agree with you, Brian, in terms of let's try to focus on alternatives as much as possible, hope for the best. But then I guess plan for the worst. And in that planning, which hopefully doesn't come to fruition, but if it does, one of my concerns is that if we lose a public service and we have to fill gaps in some way for people, I would like to find a way for the MBTA to be able to capture that information, to be able to work with whatever entities are going to have to fill in those gaps as holistically as possible, just so that when we get out of this mess, we have a stronger ground to move forward.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Rich
Mike Serino and Saugus, I think I saw your hand raised.
Yes, Brian, just a quick question. Looking at the calendar, I didn't see any meetings for service cuts in the North Shore for the bus routes. Do you know anything, or have you heard anything about that?
I didn't see Saugus specifically listed there, Mike.
I'm looking
I
for
imagine
the entire region, Lynn, Saugus, because the buses start from Salem and cut through Saugus. I didn't see anything for the North
It's a really good point. It's a really good point. We'll have to talk to them about that and make sure they do something.
Okay, thank you.
There is, they do note on the 24th, kind of North Shore, Newburyport, Rockport line.
Yeah, that's a commuter rail, isn't it?
That's more commuter rail, not bus.
Yeah.
You're right. You're right. So none of the 400 series buses are listed. Maybe that means you're okay.
I hope so.
I hope so too, but I based on the past, I wouldn't be.
No, there's a couple routes that they wanted to cut, so I guess the 429 and the 431. So that's, I didn't see it on the calendar. I said, oh, surprise. Okay.
Good catch, Mike.
Thank you.
I saw Rich Prohn's hand. Rich.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. I have a question, and then the first thing is this is all driven by the lack of revenue that the T is not getting now. Am I correct in saying that? With all these cuts?
Yes.
Okay, so everybody, the city of Boston basically right now, as it has been for a long time, is operating on low batteries. We have right now we have practically no one going anywhere because of the level we're at. But the question I have is, I would like the T to remember how this was pre-pandemic. This entire system, the commuter rail was standing room only, just packed. Coming into Boston with 1,200 passengers. Now they're coming in with 50 if they're lucky. The ferries were packed. And the T's function, or in their mission statement, they want to carry as many people as possible and take cars off the highway for eliminate greenhouse gases and everything else. But I think they have to look at this through a long lens. They just can't say, okay, we're going to wipe everything out because no one's riding the train. What are they going to do when the pandemic ends? The city of Boston is building new skyscrapers, office towers, like it's going to end in a year and a half, and these things are all going to be filled. South Station, Back Bay. So what is the mechanism in the T? Is the T going to be able to say, we still can't afford it? I mean, the ridership's going to come back after the pandemic. I know there'll be people working from home, but the majority of people are going to be still making the trek into Boston. So I just want to keep that in perspective for the T to remember, okay, I'm not a fan of empty trains, and transportation is a supply and demand industry. If you don't have any demand, then it's kind of crazy for you to put out there the full supply of trains or buses and ferries that you had before. But when it straightens out, you know you're going to be crowded again. And so that's what I want to make sure the T understands. What are they going to do when it really starts, the expressway really starts loading up and backing up 15 or 20 miles like it was pre-pandemic?
It's a very good point, Rich. Thank you. Thank you. Gonna try to get back to the raised hands on the list in the order I see them. I have Todd Blake in Medford.
Hi, thank you, Brian. I just wanted to point out some obvious things in terms of public communications to the public and to the member communities. When they post something like that on the T website, the T communications department, at the very least, should send an email to the executive member communities, to give us an alert. And also, again, an obvious thing, the messaging with the forging ahead versus service cuts directly impacts people's acknowledgement of what the meeting actually is about, and it affects attendance. So not to mention the obvious cuts to Medford that we're not pleased with.
Absolutely, Todd. It's funny. I had a discussion with somebody at the T on Friday, and they were, talking about how logistically difficult these public meetings are. I said, you're doing them by Zoom, and you're only doing 11. When I was at the T, I did 14, and I had to drive an hour to each one. But hey, it's a different world we're in. But yes, I absolutely agree, Todd, that they have to be better at communicating, and we're going to hold their feet to the fire on that for sure. I have Phil in Hull.
Yes, good evening. Good afternoon. Can you guys hear me?
Sure, Phil.
Yeah. Okay, thank you very much. I noted that one of your subcommittees is going to be the ferry subcommittee.
Mm-hmm.
I would urge that that committee, upon formation, immediately contact the Water Advisory Transportation Council, and have a joint meeting with that group. That group is legislative impaneled, and it's chaired by Madam Pollock, but it's legislatively impaneled to really focus on ferry transportation in the Boston Harbor. And, I wouldn't want that group to feel that there was kind of an end run going on.
Really?
They have a lot of resources, and, I think that they could bring a lot of very, very important information to the table.
That's great, Phil. Great advice. We'll certainly do that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's see. David Coase is in Newton.
Hey, so I definitely agree that that the committee should be meeting to discuss the specific modes. If we can fit all these meetings in this very short time frame. If a community is not on an official committee, I'm sure that there's still going to be a lot of interest in participating in whatever meetings we have. So can we just ensure that everybody is informed of when these meetings are scheduled and can take place? Also, I have a question. These service cuts are so significant to everybody, and I'm just wondering, how we're comparing to other communities across the country and across the world, really. Is there a sense that everybody is facing the same level of service cuts, or do they seem to be more severe here?
So David, to your first point, absolutely. I will make sure that all members are aware of all committee meetings and everyone will be invited to participate. You're absolutely right and spot on there. In terms of context, nationally, everybody is in the same boat in terms of transit. The MTA in New York is looking at a significantly larger deficit in the billions. Public transit in this country is under siege right now because of ridership or lack thereof. There is a hope that, if the administration changes, there might be money flowing, but we don't know. But the T is not alone in this. The T is actually a little better off financially because it is actually less reliant on fare revenue than some others as a proportion. But it is definitely a national issue. And it is something that that I certainly pay close attention to and what other properties are facing. Thanks, David. Kelly Moore and Braintree, or on the road.
I pulled over just so I can participate in a more mannerly fashion. So, related back to the fare cut question, and historically, how have we reacted, not fare cut, but service cut, how have we reacted or how has the T reacted to regaining the services that were cut for whatever reason? Has that been, and these seem to be fairly dramatic. This is not just one line. This is across the board. And I'm most concerned actually about the services out of Hall that, even though I'm in Braintree, many of our constituents here could use the Hall service ridership as well. So anyway, so from a historical perspective, how has the T actually responded to regaining the services lost?
Sure, Kelly. So the last time anything this dramatic was on the table was 2012. There was at that time a legislative solution where more money was brought to bear. So in my time paying attention to the T, I've never seen this level of, or what we expect to be this level of cuts actually take place. So I don't know how to answer your question about how services come back. What we have seen over the last few years at the T is a large number of pilot programs that some of which turn into regularly scheduled service. And I believe that would be the process and the mechanism through which things would come back. But as we all know, once the assets are gone and once the ridership kind of goes elsewhere, it's very difficult to attract that back. So it's a situation where, once something is gone, it's very difficult for it to sort of resurrect. In terms of the advisory board's history on things like this, 2012, we offered a series of alternatives designed to maintain service as much as possible. Our position as a body has always been service cuts should be a last resort, not a first resort, and that there should be other things done first. We actually have supported fare increases over service cuts in the past. That's not really an option this time because ridership is so low. So we are a body that wants to keep service levels where they are. We are a body that traditionally wants to increase options for commuters to and from Boston and through the cities and towns where development is taking place. That has been our position as a body in the past. And it's something that I think we should, it's a tradition that I think we should sort of continue. We have been reluctant to support expansion projects because things like this continue to happen every 3 or 4 years. And, we traditionally have been the body that sort of says, keep the money where the ridership currently is. And in this situation, I think our position should be similar. As Rich Prone said, it's coming back at some point. Let's make sure that the assets and the schedules are there so that when folks do get back on trains and buses and ride vehicles and ferries, there's a vehicle there to take them. Thank you, Kelly.
Thank you, Brian.
Margot from Bedford, did you have your hand raised, or is that from the last time?
Yeah, no, I do. I have a follow-up question, and I know that we're trying to orient ourselves towards system-wide issues, but I did notice something that does relate to Bedford.
Yep.
The way that they have triaged these meetings and broken them down by geography reflects a lack of understanding about how some of our systems work. So for example, the meeting that's scheduled with Arlington, Burlington, and Lexington would be discussing the bus route that comes to Bedford. But Bedford is being triaged in all of the Metro West areas, many of which have commuter rail service but don't have buses.
Right.
So first of all, I just want to note that as being disturbing to me that somebody didn't notice that our bus route is being discussed on a different night. And then second, say, is there a way to correct that? Do we have any, is there a contact person, or is there any way for us to register that that is a mistake and that should be corrected?
So certainly the public meetings are open to everybody, so don't feel like it's restrictive. A. B.
Oh, no, but I'm just saying in terms of public comment, people are, if they're aware of these meetings at all, which they're probably not, they would go to a meeting where our bus line would not be being discussed, and in fact, it would be being discussed at another date with, and not, they wouldn't know it.
So I think a great solution would be if you as a member of the select board or the board itself would write a letter. Certainly that's a good formal way to do that. Copy me on it. In the meantime, I'll start working behind the scenes to make that note and make sure that that is correct.
To whom should we address that?
The general manager of the MBTA or the chairman of the board.
Okay.
If you could copy me on it, that would allow me to do a little work.
I'll do that today. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so I noticed it is after 11. I'm happy to keep going if you folks are. We try to keep these to an hour, but you know we'll keep going with the questions until folks drop off. How about that?
If I can jump in, Brian.
Sure.
And I appreciate all the comments, and as everybody knows, because some of us at the municipal level are going to be dealing with some challenges as well. I certainly know in Quincy we're dealing with some revenue shortfalls, and not knowing exactly what the backfilling may or may not be in the coming months from the feds or the state. Well, really from the feds, because the state's got some major revenue shortfalls as well. So I think as we explore these, and I know some folks want more power for the board going forward as far as control and budget, I think with that comes responsibility, right? I mean, we can't be advocating. We can be advocating. We should be for all of our communities, but at the same time, there's got to be a realistic recognition that we've got a tough time we're going to deal with right now, and there's going to be some hard decisions. And I'm a little concerned about too much capital going to operating, because those are the bad habits we had for years. And we've seen the last several years with the capital being appropriately dealt with, we've seen great improvements made on deferred maintenance for decades. And with ridership down, it's also a good time to be doing improvements to these things where it has a less effect on those commuters. So there's a lot of complex issues to deal with right now. The simplicity is to it all, revenue is down, and we got to deal with that. There's no question. And the state is not in a position to bail us out. Their billions down in their revenue side. So with any hope, we may see more from the feds. But I know I'm not counting on that in Quincy as we're making decisions. So I just throw that out there. It's not I'm not condemning anybody's comments or remarks. It's just an observation that it's going to be some tough decisions that are going to have to be made. And I don't want to go back to the old habits of the tea that got us in the doldrums, if you will, in many ways. So thank you.
Oh, absolutely, sir. Nobody wants to go back to those days. That would be bad. Okay, Colette in Wellesley.
Hi, thank you. I just had a couple of questions and one comment. The last time we heard about delivery of stock, rolling stock being ordered for the Framingham-Worcester line, it seemed like that was going to be a long time coming. There was a fairly long lead time on those assets.
Yes.
And just thinking about, Mr. Prohn's point about ridership will come back, it would be nice to have a handle on what's happening with those longer term purchases to increase capacity, because that line was, really very, very busy. So nice to know about that. And then to the point that was just discussed before, I wonder if one of the alternatives that we can talk about is that these cuts, these service cuts, should be considered as temporary, and then maybe prioritize in terms of which ones would come back first once we know more in the spring about what's going to happen in terms of dealing with the pandemic and getting people back onto transportation. Just trying to keep your riders thinking that this isn't a permanent cut and it's something that's just temporary and come back. And then again, in the longer term, we know there's going to be construction on I-90 in terms of the Alston interchange. And so we don't want to drive people away from public transport onto the roads when we know there's going to be big construction like that that's going to make it even more difficult for people to drive. And so we want to keep our riders on our public transportation and make this seem more like a temporary service cut rather than permanent.
It's a wonderful comment, Colette. Thank you. It makes a lot of sense. And
Brian, I know we're losing folks along here because we're getting beyond the hour. I'd be happy to stay, but keep in mind that you can continue to stay in touch with Brian or myself. We can formulate some of these thoughts going forward. I would hope that all of these are temporary cuts, and the reality is, if there was an area that was robust, I got to believe the T wants to bring that back sooner than later, because that's revenue, right? Which is the challenge. So I'd be happy to keep going, but I know the hour's getting late, and I do see a number of people dropping off. Is there any other questions at this point?
This is Roy Epstein in Belmont. Brian, is there a ready data source where we could see what ridership is on the various routes in advance of these meetings?
I have it, Roy, and I'll try to put that on our webpage.
Okay.
I guess if I could just jump in, I'm trying to get a sense of the body. It seems like there is support for coming up with some alternatives. It seems like there is support for coming up with an approach that helps, suggest that we retain as much ridership as possible. There is support for making it clear that we regard these as temporary and not permanent. And this is really helpful to me as I begin working in earnest on ways to, and speaking publicly about this on your behalf. So that is very helpful to me. I do know if folks have to go, feel free to drop off. I'll stay. We can adjourn and I can just keep talking to people if that works for you, Mr. Mayor. And I'm happy to stay on. If folks want to stay on and continue the conversation, that's fine. We don't have to be in formal session to do that. We've completed our business as a body. So, if that works for folks, I'll stay on and we can keep talking.
Hey, Brian, this is Todd Medford. Hey, in terms of what Brian has said and Mayor Longo-Cohn, it does make sense to, at least as Mayor Koch said, cuts have to happen, but instead of wholesale cuts of entire routes, if you keep some level of service on different things, it may make it easier to come back later than if they're entirely cut. And then also the data point that Brian made about, if they make those return services based on data, it may be challenging either way if they're cut entirely or they remain. But at least if they remain in some fashion, it may make it easier to come back at some point.
Good point, Todd. I see Linda Alexson from Ipswich. Hi, Linda. Thanks for joining us.
You. Admittedly, this is my first meeting.
Welcome.
I'm on the Ipswich Select Board, and I do have concerns about the notices of the public hearings. And I just want to ask if the different municipalities, the select boards and city councils and such will be notified of their area hearings. We're on the Newburyport line, and I was a long-time rider of the commuter rail for close to 30 years, so I know a lot of the issues as a customer over those years, but it seems that we don't get a lot of the notices, and a lot of times over the years the hearings have been impossible for commuters to attend.
Right.
I think it might be a little bit easier with Zoom because people can log in from anywhere, but I just want to make sure that folks are aware that these meetings are happening with proper advertising, and certainly letting the municipal boards know that they're happening?
So I can't speak for the T, what their plans are. I know in the past they have done newspaper ads and they have sent letters, but to your point, Linda, and many other members, it's usually, it's not always sufficient. So, I found this on their webpage. I had to do some digging, but that's probably not good enough. So we will continue to hold their feet to the fire to get more information out there than less. I would encourage you, as I did, with Bedford, if your board wants to write a letter, please do. Please copy me on it. The more data like this I have, the better to be able to advocate for the membership. And I would, just feel free to copy me. Email's fine for me. You don't have to send me a piece of paper. But I would appreciate the more information and the more sentiments from cities and towns, the better.
Okay.
Can you, when they do come out with their service cuts next Monday, I think you said,
Yep.
will you send something to us?
Absolutely.
Send something to us?
We're gonna summarize everything and get down to brass tacks and send it out.
That was my other question was, is there a document that shows what the proposed cuts are?
Not yet. It'll come out either late Friday or probably very early Monday morning.
Okay, and we can find that on
It'll be on the T webpage. Following the meeting, which I will attend virtually like this, we'll try to get something out to all the membership about what the exact proposals are.
Great, thank you, thank you.
Thank you.
Todd, your hand is still raised. Did you have a question or was that from
Sorry.
before?
That was from before, sorry.
Hey, no worries. Greg Gamond.
Hi, thank you. Two questions. The old schedules used to highlight the off-peak service or peak service for the commuter rail. The one I just pulled up on the website doesn't tell us what peak service is anymore. So it would be helpful for us to be able to identify to my Board of Selectmen what exactly these cuts would mean. And second, I'm taking it that this is an elimination of weekend service because that was probably considered off-peak.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Jen Constable of Hull. Hi, Jen.
Hi, Brian. Thank you. Just two quick things. One, I just wanted to underscore, I think, the importance of reconvening the Water Transportation Advisory Committee, or at a bare minimum, having their feedback for the Ferry Committee prior to them meeting. This way they can feed, that committee some already existing information. And then I just wanted to touch upon quickly the discussion around permanency. Last I understood, the T is saying permanent is not permanent. It's permanent during COVID. We all know that when something's permanent, it tends to be permanent. And I think it's really important right now to keep at the forefront of our conversation because these cuts are so significant and so deep. I mean, and I'll use Hull as an example. They're talking about cutting all our modes of transportation, subsidized bus line, the ferry service, and then we don't even have a connection to the closest commuter rail station. That we start talking now about how we're emerging out of permanent, as opposed to waiting to see, where we're at 6 months, 8 months, a year, or what turns into 2 years down the road. We keep that pressure on now.
Very good point.
Thank you.
Good point. Thank you.
I have one more question before I have to leave. Richard,
go ahead, Rich.
Yeah, I heard you mention the number 400 when you were giving your opening remarks.
Mm-hmm.
Does that mean the T has hired 400 more management employees?
I don't have the breakdown of what type of employees they are, just the total headcount.
And that's does that include the operating crews or does that?
It's total headcount. So the total headcount at the close of it was August of this current fiscal year minus the total headcount of August of fiscal 18.
Well, I'm assuming most of that is, I don't think the operating, the ferries, the buses, the trains, they haven't added any service. And
ferries and commuter rail are contracted, so those numbers aren't included in that total.
Yeah. Well, I would just really be a little, upset if they hired a lot of extra management employees, let's say another 100 even, and while they're cutting service, because obviously they shouldn't need as many if the service is being cut. So I want to make sure that that hasn't happened.
An important data point, Rich, for sure.
And I got to go. So my daughter's chiming in from England with my new grandson.
Say hello. Congratulations.
All right, thank you.
Wow, Deborah Gall, my erstwhile colleague. Hi, Deborah.
Hello, everyone. I've lost my voice from election yesterday, but I wanted to bring up a point. In the past from the MBTA, wasn't it required that whenever they had service cuts meetings, they had to put it in the local newspapers so anybody could attend the meetings? But because we're doing it virtually, won't they still have to put it in the paper in ahead of the meetings to let people, regular people know about these, other than just town officials?
I don't know. I mean, the first meeting is next Tuesday, right? If communities have weekly newspapers, you know, mine comes out on Thursday, so it would have to be in tomorrow's newspaper.
No, I mean like the Globe and the Herald.
I don't know.
I thought in the past they had to.
Well, they certainly, their policy says they should.
Okay.
Whether they will or not, I don't know, but we're going to certainly hold them accountable for that. Susan Barrett from Lexington. Hello.
I also feel like this is an awfully tight timeline, and what the T can do to get the word out more, but also urging us here in this group to do our best to promote it in our communities. You know, most of us have social media and town newsletters and so forth. So I think we need to do our best to educate people. And then I have a question for you, Brian.
Sure.
Do you know, so obviously we're looking at cuts, at expansion of service, but do you know there'd been this long talk about kind of urbanizing portions of the commuter rail, right, as part of the 2040 plan and so forth. And I'm wondering, have you heard anything new on that, given these changes and given that people may not necessarily follow the same kind of peak time travel patterns, even when they do start to come back more to work? Have you heard anything about that, or is that just totally on hold?
Well, I mean, at best, Susan, the sort of regional rail plan was always aspirational.
Yeah.
There are no U.S. manufacturers of DMUs right now, for instance. So for that plan to happen, they would have had to have hoped for a manufacturing revolution to create vehicles that met Federal Railroad Administration crashworthiness standards that were electrically powered. That certainly just don't exist right now in the market.
I apologize. I mean, I'm just wondering if anyone's looking at an opportunity to use the current commuter rail, assets that we have to maybe not just be like a peak time service, but more of an all day, I realize it's expanding service, but it seems like commuting patterns are changing. And we also have people that are, work in essential services, are transit dependent. And can this be more of that opportunity if it's not just peak time?
No, absolutely. The only plans that I've heard similar to that would be on the Fairmont line. But I have not heard plans on any other lines outside of that one. Jay Monty, the man of the hour from Everett. Hi, Jay.
Hey, Brian, how are you?
Great, how you doing?
Good. So I just wanted to get at this issue again of kind of what's permanent and what it takes to get service back. I leveled this question at the T a week or two ago. And the way I addressed it or approached it was, obviously any cost savings I get from not running a service aren't only just the labor of not running the service, it's not maintaining the equipment, it's not maintaining the infrastructure. And those things, I think as some folks have pointed out, are much, much harder to get back. And they acknowledge the fact that, they are indeed looking at, deaccessioning, equipment like commuter rail equipment or ferries or, stuff that is very hard to get back. And, admittedly, they said those have 5, 6, 7 year time horizons to order new equipment if that were to be the case. So I think one of the ways I think we should sort of stay on their cases, is to really ask from them a plan of what they are doing with their capital assets, with these service reductions. Ask, what are you selling or retiring equipment? Are you not using a certain infrastructure that will be very hard to get back or very expensive to get back? I think that will sort of, force them into a position of really admitting what's permanent and what's not. So that's just my suggestion.
Very good suggestion, Jay. Like you said, once the assets are gone, it's very hard to get them back. Very expensive. So, and well done, by the way, on Swister Circle this last week. Great job. Folks don't know, Jay and Everett have some of the best bus lanes in the region right now, including the first one in around the Rotary. Anywhere.
Anywhere
Anywhere.
in the country, at least. I don't know if I think around the world they have a couple, but
yeah, well done.
thank you.
Dan Salvucci and Whitman.
Yes, thank you, Brian. Just curious, I saw the calendar that you put up where they're going to have the public meetings. And of course, the one for my area, I forget, I think it's on a Monday night. I forget what it is. But what I'm saying, are they going to send out notices with Zoom so we can attend those meetings live? So if we have any questions dealing with the any possible changes in what's happening in my area, we can discuss it.
I don't know what they're going to do, Dan. In the past, that is what they have done. What I'm hearing from folks is that no one knows yet. And that sounds problematic to me.
Yeah.
And this is certainly something that I'm going to bring up with them and sort of suggest that they need to do a much better job of communicating this, especially to boards of selectmen. I mean, the fact that you guys don't know is nuts.
Right. We need, we need to know. But I can remember when they had like meetings, we'll say in Brockton, that and to cover the whole area, the Whitman, the Abington, that whole line.
Yep.
There was over 100 people at that meeting.
Yep.
And they had lots of questions.
Yep.
And so when it affects their ridership as far as getting back and forth to work or whatever they need it for. So that being said, you would think that they would hopefully post it, but how many people can you have on Zoom? Can't have 200 people at a meeting on Zoom, I don't think.
It's going to be a challenge, Dan. I don't know.
So, but anyways,
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, at least
I remember going to high school auditoriums for these things and they'd be packed.
Right. And especially now, people need to know ahead of time so they can make plans. And if we have open meetings for everybody so that at least they know, okay, this is what's going to happen. Now this is what I have to do.
Yep.
So whatever. Okay, well, I'll just wait and see what they put out there.
Yep.
All right. Thank you, Brian. I need to go. I have a meeting in my selectman's office. I'm now chairman of the Board of Selectmen, so I have a meeting. I have to leave.
Condolences. Congratulations.
Yeah, condolences is fine.
Brian Howard and Randolph.
Just real quickly, Brian, when you're able to get data, some of the data that I think would certainly be helpful to me and to the town of Randolph would be where the ridership was both before the pandemic and now. One of the concerns that I have is making sure that the T looks at equity, that there are communities, and I do think some of the communities that were harder hit with the coronavirus, these are people that were frontline workers. I think they were relying on the T to get to work. And I just, I'm hoping that you'll be able to get data that will at least allow us to take a look at the ridership as it currently stands and the ridership beforehand, so we can see which communities were able to adapt, meaning that they could work from home, they could use Zoom, whatever the case may be, and those communities where those frontline workers, essential workers, had to rely on the T because they don't have other modes of transportation.
It's very important, Brian. I don't know what sort of counts they've been doing during the pandemic, but certainly whatever is available, we'll get, and we'll make sure that it's made available to everybody of the advisory board.
Thank you.
Brian, will you let us know when you post that, please, with an email?
Absolutely. It's going to take me a couple of days to get everything pulled together, but yeah, absolutely. David, I did send to you the ferry ridership that you requested. It bounced back several times. But it keeps trying to get to you. So David, you're muted. I'm sorry. Yeah, David, you're still muted. But I did share that with Rep. Machino and folks down the South Shore who are asking for it. So happy to do that.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. All right, that was the end of the raised hands. Does anybody have any final? By the way, Mayor Koch had to leave for another meeting. So I'm going to assume that we are already adjourned and this is just chat. We lost a quorum a long time ago, but happy to keep talking to folks or we can call it depending on what folks want to do. So yes, if there's no further questions, we can consider this meeting wrapped. Colette, do you have a question or anybody else? Anybody?
I was just going to ask, who should we write to at the T? But what are the names we should write letters to, especially about the communications and being disappointed that we haven't heard anything and we can't tell our people anything?
Sure. General Manager Steve Poftak, P-O-F-T-A-K, FMCB, Chairman Joseph Aiello. And I'll shoot you an email after this, Colette, so you have that.
Thank you.
In writing.
Thanks.
Frank, do you want to close us out here?
Yeah. Is there any other new business? Okay. Someone make a motion to adjourn?
So moved. Wellesley?
Second?
I'll second that.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Raise your hands. Opposed? Okay, I guess we're adjourned.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Brian.